The arrival of Islam in East Africa. Introduction. The arrival of Islam in East Africa marks a significant chapter in the region's history, shaping its cultural, social, and economic landscapes. Spanning modern-day countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Somalia, East Africa became a vibrant hub of Islamic influence through trade, migration, and cultural exchange. This essay explores the historical context, mechanisms, and impacts of Islam's spread in East Africa, highlighting key periods, figures, and transformations from the 7th century onward. Historical context and early contact. Islam's introduction to East Africa began as early as the 7th century, shortly after the religion's emergence in the Arabian Peninsula. The East African coast, known as the Swahili Coast, was a thriving center of trade due to its strategic location along the Indian Ocean. Arab and Persian merchants, navigating monsoon winds, established trade networks connecting East Africa to the Middle East, India, and beyond. These traders brought goods like spices, textiles, and gold, but also their Islamic faith, which gradually took root in coastal communities. The earliest evidence of Islam in East Africa comes from the Horn of Africa, particularly in regions like modern-day Somalia and Eritrea. By the 8th century, Muslim refugees fleeing persecution in the Arabian Peninsula sought refuge in the Aksumite Kingdom, modern-day Ethiopia and Eritrea. The Aksumite ruler, known as the Negus, provided sanctuary, marking one of the earliest documented interactions between Islam and East African rulers. This event, known as the First Hijra, laid a foundation for peaceful coexistence and cultural exchange. The role of trade and the Swahili Coast. The Swahili Coast, stretching from Somalia to Mozambique, became the epicenter of Islamic influence in East Africa. Ports like Mombasa, Malindi, Kilwa, and Zanzibar flourished as cosmopolitan hubs where African, Arab, Persian, and Indian cultures mingled. The Swahili people, a Bantu-speaking ethnic group, adopted Islam through sustained contact with Muslim traders. These traders often settled in coastal towns, intermarried with local populations, and established families that blended African and Islamic traditions, giving rise to the Swahili culture. By the 9th century, Islamic practices were evident in coastal settlements. Archaeological findings, such as mosques and Muslim burial sites in places like Shono and Kilwa, indicate the presence of organized Muslim communities. The Great Mosque of Kilwa, constructed in the 11th century, stands as a testament to the architectural and cultural influence of Islam. These early mosques, often built with coral stone, reflected a fusion of local building techniques and Islamic aesthetics. Trade was the primary vehicle for Islam's spread. The Indian Ocean Trade Network facilitated the exchange of ideas alongside goods. Muslim merchants introduced Arabic script, which influenced the development of the Swahili language written in Arabic script. This linguistic evolution enabled the recording of local histories and religious texts, further embedding Islam in the region's cultural fabric. Mechanisms of Islamization. The spread of Islam in East Africa was largely peaceful, driven by economic and social incentives rather than conquest. Several mechanisms facilitated this process. Trade and economic integration. Muslim merchants offered access to lucrative trade networks, encouraging local elites to adopt Islam to strengthen commercial ties. Conversion often brought social prestige and economic advantages, as Muslim traders preferred dealing with co-religionists. Intermarriage and cultural synthesis. Intermarriage between Muslim traders and local women created kinship ties that bridged cultural divides. The resulting Swahili culture blended Bantu traditions with Islamic practices, creating a unique identity that embraced Islam while retaining African elements. Education and scholarship. Islamic scholars, known as ulama, played a crucial role in spreading Islam. They established Quranic schools and taught Islamic jurisprudence, theology, and literacy. These schools attracted local elites, who saw education as a pathway to social mobility. Sufi influence. Sufi orders, with their emphasis on mysticism and inclusivity, appealed to East Africans. Sufi missionaries adapted Islamic teachings to local customs, making the religion more accessible. Their emphasis on spiritual practices, such as dhikr, remembrance of God, resonated with African spiritual traditions. By the 12th century, Islam had become firmly established along the coast, with city-states like Kilwa Kisiwani emerging as powerful Islamic centers. The Kilwa Sultanate, founded by Persian settlers, became a beacon of Islamic governance and culture, minting its own coins and fostering trade with the broader Muslim world. Spread to the interior. While Islam initially took root along the coast, its spread to the interior was slower and more complex. By the 19th century, trade routes extending inland facilitated the diffusion of Islam. Swahili and Arab traders ventured into the interior to acquire ivory, slaves, and other goods, bringing Islamic practices with them. Communities in regions like Buganda, modern-day Uganda, and northern Tanzania began adopting Islam through these interactions. The rise of the Zanzibar Sultanate in the 19th century, under Omani rule, further accelerated Islam's inland spread. Zanzibar became a major hub for the slave trade and clove production, attracting Muslim traders and administrators. The Sultanate's influence extended to the mainland, where local rulers, such as those in the Yarrow and Nyamwezi communities, converted to Islam to align with Zanzibari economic and political power. Missionary activities also played a role in the interior. Muslim clerics accompanied trade caravans, teaching Islam to local populations. In some cases, rulers converted to gain favor with powerful Muslim traders, as seen in the Buganda Kingdom, where Islam gained a foothold before the arrival of Christianity. Impact on East African societies. The arrival of Islam profoundly shaped East African societies, influencing various aspects of life. Cultural transformation. Islam introduced new forms of art, architecture, and literature. Coralstone mosques, intricately carved wooden doors, and Arabic-influenced poetry became hallmarks of Swahili culture. The adoption of Arabic script enriched Swahili literature, with works like the Epic of Liongo reflecting Islamic themes. Social structures. Islam influenced social hierarchies, with Muslim elites often holding prominent positions in coastal city-states. The concept of Ummah, Islamic community, fostered a sense of unity among diverse groups, though it sometimes created tensions with non-Muslim communities. Economic development. Islamic trade networks integrated East Africa into the global economy. Coastal cities amassed wealth through commerce, enabling the construction of grand mosques and palaces. The introduction of Islamic financial practices, such as sukuk, bonds, facilitated trade and investment. Religious syncretism. Islam in East Africa often blended with indigenous beliefs, creating syncretic practices. For example, Swahili Muslims continued to honor ancestral spirits alongside Islamic rituals, reflecting a pragmatic approach to religious integration. Challenges and resistance. The spread of Islam was not without challenges. In some regions, local resistance arose due to cultural differences or political rivalries. Indigenous religious practices, deeply rooted in African spirituality, sometimes clashed with Islamic monotheism. Additionally, the arrival of European colonial powers in the 19th century introduced Christianity, which competed with Islam for converts. In areas like Buganda, tensions between Muslim and Christian converts led to conflicts, such as the religious wars of the 1880s. Colonialism also disrupted Islamic institutions. European powers, particularly the British and Germans, imposed new administrative systems that marginalized Muslim elites in some areas. However, Islam's resilience, rooted in its deep cultural integration, allowed it to endure and even grow during the colonial period. Legacy and contemporary relevance. The arrival of Islam in East Africa left a lasting legacy. Today, Islam remains a major religion in the region, with significant Muslim populations in Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and Somalia. The Swahili Coast continues to be a cultural and religious hub, with historic sites like the Jedi ruins and the old town of Lamu recognized as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Islam's influence is evident in modern East African societies, from language and cuisine to festivals and governance. The Swahili language, enriched by Arabic loanwords, is a national language in Kenya and Tanzania. Islamic festivals like Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha are widely celebrated, reflecting the religion's enduring presence. The historical spread of Islam also informs contemporary issues. Debates over Islamic law, Sharia, education, and political representation continue to shape East African societies. Additionally, the region's Muslim communities maintain ties with the global Islamic world, fostering cultural and economic exchanges. Conclusion. The arrival of Islam in East Africa was a transformative process driven by trade, migration, and cultural exchange. From its early roots on the Swahili Coast to its gradual spread into the interior, Islam reshaped the region's social, cultural, and economic landscapes. Through peaceful mechanisms like trade and intermarriage, Islam became deeply integrated into East African societies, creating a unique synthesis of African and Islamic traditions. Despite challenges from indigenous resistance and colonial disruptions, Islam's legacy endures, making it a vital part of East Africa's historical and contemporary identity.